We go hit him with the left, hit him with the right. We go hit him with the left, hit him with the right. It's a fight, it's a fight.
Here, boss him, here, boss him.
It's a fight, it's a fight.
Here, boss him, here, boss him.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies. The podcast where Matt and Todd go see a movie at our local Regal Cinema. Unless we are continuing our Rocky Balboa out with the final Rocky movie installment of our quest, which is happening today. And we have our special guest, Cummins.
Hello.
I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy, and yes, we have done 3 Rocky movies today, and now we're going to be talking about Rocky Balboa, which is the 6th movie in the series of all Rocky films. And yeah, we've got all the returning players coming back who are still alive. One player has left the franchise, which is Adrian.
Yes.
She is dead in this film.
But not in life. Well, maybe now. But not when the movie came out.
Right. Still credited.
Well, they did use her
flashbacks.
Yeah, they used her likeness in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But we've got Sylvester Stallone. We've got a new actor playing Rocky's son, Milo Ventimiglia. That's wrong.
I don't know.
Can confirm Talia Shire is alive, according to
All
Wikipedia.
right.
It's good.
Still kicking.
And we've got what's his name? Burt Logan.
Young.
Bertie Logan.
I don't know. Yep, he's still back as Paulie, and we've got what's his name? Tony. Someone.
Burton.
Tony Burton is back as
The heart and soul of the franchise.
yes. I think that's pretty much it. Am I missing anyone? We've got some cameos. Mike Tyson appears in this film.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's all about it.
Great.
As far as famous people, there's other people in this movie, but as far as like famous, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. So, what is Rocky Balboa about? Well, Rocky is once again in retirement and owns a restaurant named after his dead wife, and is trying to see his son every once in a while, and starts to get this itch to maybe fight again. The beast inside, something deep in the basement is left over for him, and he wants to bring that to the surface and maybe do some local fights or something. No big deal. So he goes as far as to get this get kind of reinstated with a boxing license and stuff like that. At the same time, there's something that happens, this kind of computer comparison of Rocky Balboa versus the current heavyweight champion. It's a computer simulation, and Rocky wins. It's supposed to be like both fighters in their prime and who would win, and Rocky wins. So that sort of generates some buzz in the world, and then the actual heavyweight guy was like, well, what if we did an exhibition fight? Since Rocky has gotten this license, we could do something for charity, and it won't be too much of a big deal. So people in Rocky's life are alternately trying to talk him out of it or trying to talk him into it, and we have several people who come back into Rocky's life from earlier films. One of them is the guy that he fights in the very first movie, whose name is Spider Rico. Spider Rico. And another one is Little Maria, who he takes on a walk around the neighborhood and tells her not to smoke and hang out on the corner with the boys when she's a little girl. and he ends up kind of taking her and her son under his wing, and they develop a friendship over the course of the movie. And anyway, it all leads up to this kind of big exhibition fight, which Rocky ends up going through with. And it's more competitive than anyone could ever have thought. And that's what Rocky Balboa is about. Todd, your thoughts?
Well, I definitely love this movie, to no one's surprise. It's like, I know that I've said you need Rocky 5 to get to this movie, and I mean, I still think you kind of do, in a sense of like, if you went just from 4 to this movie, it's like such a big leap, but really this movie is what 5 should have been, in a sense of like, we're coming to the conclusion a lot of to the natural conclusion of some of these characters. Obviously we've got some older age setting in for some of the characters and stuff, and you know, this movie does a whole lot better job of capturing just the heart of the first movie, while also showing the progression of characters since the 70s into the early 2000s when this movie takes place and was filmed and stuff like that. So, you know, we've got Rocky, who's kind of not... like, I feel like people would say down on his luck. He's not down on his luck. It's just, you know, Adrian passed away from cancer, and, you know, he runs a restaurant, and I think he's just feeling kind of... like, I think what this movie does well is that it's not like Rocky wants to get back into the fight to just fight. Like, it's more just like he feels this kind of sense of coming to the conclusion of his story, and he's got some leftover frustrations with his life, in a sense of he never thought this would be his life. He never thought that Adrian would not be here, and he never thought that he'd have this kind of weird, estranged relationship with his son. And it's almost like, because at this point he's such a passive guy, that he's just been bottling up all that stuff as it's happened. And so it's this kind of expression of and there's a great dialogue between Rocky and Paulie about this, where he's like trying to express his feelings, but he can't, because he's this iconic character and is from an era of you don't share your feelings really, or whatever. And it's like such a great scene of him trying to wrestle with these feelings of just feeling this crushing anger and slight disappointment, and what are you going to do with it, and stuff like that. And so that's just an example of like the beautiful nuggets in this movie. Overall, I think the story's phenomenal. I think everything about the movie is really good. I mean, there's some acting in here that's like, you know, kind of just who cares. Like, I think the woman who plays Marie does pretty okay. The guy who plays her son is just kind of there. Like, I don't ever really feel like he's trying. He's just kind of there. And, you know, they used an actual boxer again, the guy who plays Mason Dixon. And there are times where I'm like, you know, aesthetically I know why you picked a boxer, because it looks good for all the fight scenes. But then in some of these heavy acting scenes, you know, he does an okay job, but, you know, you're at least I was feeling like, okay, you know, that scene could have been tighter and better, but you got what you got off of who you picked, and the pros and cons of why you picked that person. So, phenomenal story, kind of a phenomenal conclusion to all these characters, in my opinion. And honestly, I mean, this movie has easily has to be in my top 5 favorite monologues in all cinema is in this movie. And it's so iconic, and it's so good. And I mean, there's other good kind of monologue, dialogue parts of this movie. This movie gives me a ton of chills, like in different areas in the movie. So if we were rating by chills alone, it'd be a super high chill movie for me. So, yeah, I think anyone should see this movie. It's a good movie by itself. Like, I mean, if you only know about Rocky and you want to watch it, I think you could do that. If you want to go through all the movies, this is honestly one of the high points, I think, in watching all the movies. So I'm a big fan. I'm going to turn it over because we'll continue to go on about why I love this movie and stuff like that. But we don't have time for that. So, Eden, what'd you feel about this movie?
I was, of all the things that we're going to watch, with the exception of the Creeds, which I've never seen before, this was obviously the my like most anticipated movie, because I remember loving it when I saw it in theaters, even though I didn't have a strong attachment to the characters of the franchise, and like kind of moving through, I was really looking forward to it, and I wasn't disappointed. Like, there's a lot of places where you can be very cynical and feel like it's very like almost hokey how much they're putting over like the you follow your dreams and you do what you're doing like kind of thing, but it doesn't matter. It still lands like in pretty much every spot. I think the story pacing is incredible. I think it does such a good job of riding that nostalgia line, but also really taking you into a new place that is also like following the cyclical storytelling that this franchise really relies on. Like, it's very parallel to his initial story of kind of getting this fight that was way bigger than he intended to have at that moment against a person who absolutely outclassed him at every stage. And like so many of these big fights, they're just about hanging. Like, it's not even about winning. Like, he just wanted to show that he could hang. And I think that Mason, the Line Dixon, has the best boxer name in like the entire franchise, and B is just like, I think that he's got one of the most interesting motivations from the antagonist point of view in the Rocky franchise. I think that they went a little overboard, making him kind of a jerk with that, and I think that lost a little bit of sympathy for him, but he's really an interesting character who is kind of like swept up into this. I didn't quite understand why they did this non-romance angle with Marie and Rocky. Like, I'm not sure why he takes such an interest in them specifically. So, like, that was a little weird and out there, but for the most part, like, I love it. I love the father-son angle. I love the, I love trying to, like, showing that the wounds caused by Rocky 5 and just, like, the life that these people lead. Like, it feels lived in. Like, it feels like these 20 years happened. And, like, they lived lives. And you are just seeing this little snippet of this final piece of it. Like a textbook that, like, you know, talks about the first 30 years of someone's life until the Revolutionary War. And also, this happened 20 years later. Like, it's just like this really neat flash forward, and it's nice that they're all doing fine. Like, they're doing well. They're not really poor. They're not like, they're just doing fine. And it's just about a guy struggling with his mortality. It's in a world where we're seeing so many of these belated sequels and things like that, I think that this is a masterclass in doing that. Like, I don't think I've seen one that has been as necessary since, and it just really closes out this arc. Like, it feels finished. Like, it feels like we did what we needed to tell. We have a coherent story, and watching them in such proximity, like, it really feels like a really coherent story. I think that the weirdest thing to me is that the Rocky franchise is 3 movies and then 3 movies of retrospective about those 3 movies, and this one hits that somehow less on the head than 5 did, but does a way better job of it. Anyway, I really loved it. I was not disappointed. I thought that it held way up, and just did a great job of closing this out.
Splendid.
Nice. Well, I really liked this one as well. You guys have touched on a lot of the points that I agree with, and I will say that I too really thought that this was a nice way to close out a lot of the characters, with the exception of Adrienne. It's kind of a sad way to close out her story, but we did get plenty of retrospective. There's a scene in the beginning of the movie where Rocky kind of walks through the different places of their dating and early relationship life, I guess, which is kind of interesting. From we just watched all the other movies where we saw all that stuff unfold, so kind of the where are we now. The decay of the years has taken its toll on all those places, and that's kind of interesting. But yeah, this is a really engaging movie. It takes you on a great ride. I agree, Todd, about the chills of this movie and kind of I haven't felt for a couple movies just the feeling of like what's gonna happen in the ring type thing, like when Rocky's fighting this big fight at the end of the movie, there's a sense of like, oh gosh, how does this play out? Even though I know how it plays out, it's still like that kind of anticipation feeling, which I thought, that's great. Yes, there's a lot of great monologues in this, and I think one of the kind of underrated pieces is the real life stuff that gets tossed in there. Like Paulie's working back at the meat factory that he was at the very beginning of the franchise and gets laid off, and Rocky has this restaurant, and there's like all these shots of him kind of interacting in restaurant mode. That's just like, that just feels like life. Like life is happening, and this is how things are now for these characters. So interesting stuff, enjoyable. I would agree that anyone can see this movie, even if you just have a little knowledge about Rocky and what Rocky means. This is a really nice story that's told. So that's where I will leave it.
Nice.
To the point of like feeling lived in and like the real life, I'm really glad that we finally got like shots of Rocky and Paulie like just having a friendship and kind of justifying why that guy is around. Like, he's still a terrible person and holds horrendous views, but you also understand that, like, okay, they do genuinely care for each other, like, they do get each other, they've lived in each other's lives for 40 years at this point, like, you get why that's still true.
Yeah.
And you just never really have that before. It's always been like, why do they let this dude hang out? But I just really liked like those little personal moments between the two of them of just two men kind of like growing old together and trying to figure out what's next. I think that I think that this franchise is a very good look at that story, and I just think that there could have been, in some of the other installments, a better execution of that, but Rocky Balboa fully makes it up. Dismounts high.
Yeah. I think it's the perfect conclusion of Rocky's story, because what comes after this, Rocky's not the main character. Like, he's a supporting character. Like, this is the last movie where Rocky is the main character.
Yeah.
And so it's just a great conclusion to his kind of story. So, great. Well, we've waited 6 movies, and now it's time to debut this rating system of how many dukes would you give this movie? Eden's favorite character, or second favorite character, depending on how he feels about the loan shark from the first one still, and second one.
Lone Shark is very good. Duke is absolutely the pinnacle of this series. He's the heart and soul. His Hurtenbaum speech is by far the best thing in the entire franchise.
He's got a great speech about building some Hurtenbaums. So, yeah, obviously 5 being the best, because then you got 5 speeches about Hurtenbaums and all that good stuff, and 5 different weird neck cracks that he does. And then obviously 0 being the worst, because then you got no speeches, no Duke, no neck cracks, no nothing. So, Eden?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4.3 Dukes, partially because of the rating system.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to announce my bias there.
Sure.
But also I just like... So many movies now don't feel necessary. They feel like, hey, there's this franchise that existed. We'll just add something because we have the ability to do that. This felt necessary. Like, it's weird that a Rocky movie came out 20 years after the previous one, but it actually does wrap up the world. It actually couldn't have been told before that point. Like, it needed to have the time in between. It is a story worth telling. It's, in my opinion, by far the best of them. And just like, it's worth it. And I can't go lower than a 4 for that.
Matt?
I am going to go even higher than that. I'm going to go with the 4.6 Dukes out of 5. I do feel like this is the best, certainly the best of the movies that we've seen so far. I would say there are no glaring problems with this movie. Probably the top of the list, which is really a nitpicky thing, is the non-romance between Rocky and Marie. It's kind of a weird relationship, I thought. But that's like a really small piece of the movie, and their friendship is fine. So yeah, I think really, really good movie, and that's where I land.
Oh, this is a hard one. I'm trying to remember what I gave Rocky 2, because that's been my long-running favorite Rocky movie, which I think I gave it a 4.3. I think this is the first Rocky movie that we've watched that has no small icky feelings to it, as far as like the things that didn't hold up well over time, of some forcible first date interactions and some gender roles in the second one, and
I mean, Polly has some.
Well,
but he's also
lines.
intended to.
Yeah,
He's
right.
supposed to look like out of touch, and
right.
it's framed for the first time as no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, there's definitely times where you're like, come on, Polly. But it's not the cringeworthiness of like the first date scenario and stuff like that. I think I'm going to have to... I mean, I'm going to give this a higher rating than when I gave Rocky 2. And I'm not sure if that means it's my new favorite, or if it's just, where I don't know. That's more... I got to take my time to decide that. I can't decide that on the spot right now. But the number in my head was a 4.5. Which would make this the 3rd highest movie I've ever ranked on our podcast. And, yeah, I think it's phenomenal. It's such a good movie. So, I'm all about it.
Great. Well, that's going to leave this movie with quite a high rating as we wrap up this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the movies with special guest Eden Cummins, and we have reviewed Rocky Balboa and come up with an average rating of 4.4 2/3 of a Duke out of 5.
That's a lot of neck cracking and
That's
So many hurt bombs.
that's a lot of all that stuff, and it's got to be one of our highest rated films on the podcast ever.
I think Parasite still takes the cake because I think I gave that like a 4.8, and you were pretty high on the 4 point something too.
Yeah, that's true. If only we had a spreadsheet with all the ratings in it. We do not, and probably never will. But it's nice to think about. So, but yeah, that's great. Go see this movie if you haven't ever seen it. Treat yourself. It's good. And thank you for listening to our podcast. We will continue to close out the Rocky Balboa podcasts as well as make other podcasts. And we'll see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.